Hi, I'm Jeremy Nicholas, and my guest is the world's greatest living aphorist. That's the master of one-liners with a message. He's the author of the best-selling book, Wisdom and Wordplay, and he's written thousands of aphorisms every day for well over 20 years. In fact, he started at the age most of us would think of retiring. I'm delighted to introduce to you Robert Eddison. Robert, how are you?
I'm extremely well. I'm very privileged to be interviewed by a leading former BBC or even current BBC broadcaster, presenter, and director. Very privileged. My
Fantastic.
boyhood.
So you've had such an interesting life, and I know you've got so many more things you want to do. You've got all these books that are still in you, but let's go right back to the start. Tell me about your boyhood.
I'm glad you said I have so many books still in me, very much so. My boyhood. As a kid, I gobbled up books. And as I had very little pocket money, they had to be secondhand and dust laden. And I plagued the secondhand bookshops in Tunbridge Wells to get the owners to drop the price so that I could get the maximum number of books each week for my pocket money. And they were all children's adventure books. And I take no credit for being super literate by the age of 10. I just wanted to read these adventure books to see what happened next. And by the time I got there, inadvertently and painlessly, I had absorbed a great deal of the English language.
So did you really want to be an adventurer once you read all of these, like pirates?
Absolutely. Yes.
And so where did it all go wrong? you didn't become a pirate or anything?
Well, you couldn't reach Mars in those days, but nice as it would have been. But I did the terrestrial equivalent. I mean, I lived for 3 years abroad in Austria, Italy, and Canada. I traveled a lot. I hitchhiked across Europe, but that was sort of afterwards.
Yeah. So you started as this young boy. You're buying all these adventure books, and then you missed 3 years of schooling. Why was that?
Well, I did. I probably never told you, but I was crippled at the age of 14 with this awful illness, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. And that meant that in my case, it took the form of a real fear of losing things. First, I didn't dare go out of the house. And then I didn't go out of my bedroom for fear of losing something in the house outside the bedroom. And then I ended up confined to my bed for fear of losing something if I got out of bed. So my poor sister, who's here tonight, used to bring trays of food to me. And she didn't get away lightly, I tell you. I had to check before she took the old dishes out that I hadn't left anything stuck to them. These awful rituals, complete time wasting. But conscious mind is very weak when confronted by the subconscious, the emotions. And I suffered badly from that illness. And as a result, I had no schooling between the ages of 14 and 17. I went back for my last year at 17.
So that must be awfully frustrating. You'd read all these adventure books. You'd sort of wanted to get around and see the world, and then suddenly you could see your world shrinking and shrinking from a house to a room to a bed. I mean, how did you turn that round?
Well, I'd never made that link. It's very, very perceptive of you, Jeremy. It's a very interesting link you've made there. And I can make another link, but having fortuitously got super literate at a prematurely young age, that stood me in fairly good stead, in part compensating for the lack of secondary schooling.
But how most people, when they get OCD, that they've got it for life. Did you just suddenly decide one day, no, that's it, I'm going to get up out of that bed?
Well, I found my own way out of it through desperation, really. When you're up against the wall, you have to think mighty hard not to stay there for the rest of your life. And you're right. I mean, I'm one of the very few people, probably, well, just a handful of people probably in the country who actually made a total recovery. And I made medical history in so doing. The way I got out of it was, once the penny dropped, that you, as I said before, conscious mind is not proof against the unconscious. You can't overcome a compulsion with conscious mind. You can't reason yourself out of it. There had to be another way, and I couldn't find that other way until suddenly one day the penny did drop, and I realized that the only way to recover totally from it and separate myself from it was to turn away from it into doing things I enjoyed, the pleasure principle. And once I sussed that, I was able to practice it periodically, you know, serially over the years, until eventually OCD ended up disappearing. It couldn't fight against that weapon. And I've become a terrible, I don't know what the word is for someone who's sybarite, who enjoys pleasure, but it certainly helped me recover.
Excellent. Let's come up to date now then, because you're what, 87 now? How is your health now? You look a picture of health to me.
I prefer to say 2.5 years off 90. It sounds better.
Okay. But how are you? 2.5 years off 90. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I don't feel 87. I feel 27.
What's the secret of your success, would you say? Because they always ask this of people when they reach a certain age. What's your secret? And it's always a whiskey at bedtime or something. What's your secret?
It's a very good question. I think in my case, all the usual boring things like, you know, regular exercise. I mean, every day I either do yoga or I swim. Kept the same weight as I was. In fact, this suit is the very suit I wore as a Cambridge undergraduate, come to think of it. Careful with food, you know, balance your diet, weigh yourself every day. Obese people tell me I'm obsessional. I think, well, if you were obsessional, you might find you weren't obese. Because if you weigh yourself every day, you can keep absolute control over your weight. The most you ever have to lose or gain is 3 pounds in an average day. And my sister Deirdre will confirm this. I think she does much the same, and she's kept very slim.
Well, I'm very impressed with that, the quality of that suit. If it's over 60 years old, it's looking very good.
Thank you. Well, I don't wear it very much.
No, it's lovely.
I like wearing it, you know, around the house occasionally if I have guests. My generation tends to prefer a tie to the open collar. I'm cut by current standards. I'm very politically incorrect, and I celebrate this. It's part of my brand. Come to think of it, Jeremy, just in answer to your earlier question, another major way I've kept mentally and physically fit is by slowly over the years doing away with stress. Shall I tell you how I do this? Because, you know, it seems to me, I was certainly brainwashed along with most people, that faced by pressure, you react like this. That's stress, and stress is a killer. It shortens your life and it's very bad for your body.
Absolutely, yes.
And once again, another penny dropped. Once I realized that you can, in fact, respond to pressure with a completely relaxed reaction. Once that penny dropped, I spent 10 years working on it, to the point now where I can honestly say I don't do stress. It's in my DNA to respond to any pressure with a relaxed reaction.
Well, that's a fantastic way to deal with it. It's almost like being a tree in the wind. You can either brace yourself against the wind and then the tree sometimes snaps, or you can bend a little bit with it. And
absolutely. And the same goes for skyscrapers.
Yeah. So I like to think of you bending a little bit as you get older. You bend a little bit, and it's kept you going.
It seems to be this. It's a proof of concept. It's proved to be the secret.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to have more chats about stress, because my shoulders by the end of the day are usually up around my ears like this, and yours are beautifully down and calm. But that's yoga and swimming for you. Let's go back to your life then, and look at your biography. I mean, it's like a LinkedIn profile, but let's look at, you know, what you did, say before university, because there was this amazing thing that you'd had this OCD where you couldn't go out, and then because you were clearly a very clever man and you read all these books, you could get to Cambridge. But before you went there, you did these gap years. You know, you think, crikey, if someone's just got over OCD, the last thing you'd think they'd be doing is traveling. How did that come about?
Well, I was surprised. I mean, you echo my own surprise, really, looking back with hindsight. My mother was a linguist, and she was brought up in Europe, in France, mainly France and Germany, Paris and Berlin, during the, which I presume, no, it was during the First World War, wasn't it? She was born in 1900.
Yeah.
And she wanted me to be a linguist, so she encouraged me to study abroad and learn a couple of 2 or 3 languages. So by the age of 18, I had, as I said, recovered symptomatically, if you understand what I mean, Jeremy. The emotional deficit, all the things I would have learnt in my teenage years, I had not, because I was wasting my time with OCD. That took years to recover from. But in symptom terms, I was functioning pretty much normally by the age of 18, having recovered in the way I described. And what I did at 18, I hitchhiked over Europe to Innsbruck, did my first gap year there, learnt German, and then through the Brenner Pass for my second gap year to Italy, to Perugia University. And then I did national service. My psychiatrist had written behind my back, I may say, to the selection board saying on no account take Robert Eddison, because if you do, you'll be throwing him out in a few months, and you will lose and he will lose. But I didn't know any of this. So I go to the board and they say, we're perfectly happy to exempt you, Mr. Edison. And I said, no, I don't want to be exempted. I want to do it. So do it I did. And I benefited hugely because I qualified for Russia, a 2-year Russian course, which incidentally was in Cambridge, to my delight, where I was going to go later. So from scratch, I became bilingual in Russian, to the point where when I was in the former Soviet Union, people didn't believe I hadn't got Russian parents. They didn't believe my dad was a Yorkshireman, my mother was an American. And then after, as you say, then after national service, I went to Cambridge, got a good degree, got a European scholarship. And after Cambridge, I was sort of partly in academia, went to Canada, where I lived for a year on a visiting lectureship. And then I made a lecture tour of America in my mid-20s after Canada, came back to England. I then got a Foreign Office consultancy, and then I thought journalism is what really appeals to me, not being a diplomat. I'm not particularly diplomatic, so it's probably just as well, to be honest. And I opted for print journalism. What opened all doors in what was then Fleet Street was getting an interview with the late Margaret Thatcher in the year before she became Prime Minister. And I rang the London Times very cheekily to say, I've got this double-page spread in a local paper, and would you be interested? And they said, no, we don't take prime ministerial interviews from reporters on local papers. So I said, well, let me send it in. Cut a long story short, 3 days later, it appeared without a single correction, 1,700 words of it, on the main feature page of the Times. And that opened all doors to national journalism. And I've been lucky in being able to remain a freelance ever since.
That was a stroke of luck. Did you like Margaret Thatcher?
I admired her. I admired her focus, her ability effortlessly to be in the present moment. You never felt you had to repeat anything. Shall I tell you, do we have time, Jeremy, for me to tell you how I got her to stop interrupting me? Or allowing me to interrupt her, I should say.
Well, I tell you what, let's save that to the end. Let's say at the end of this, we will find how Robert got so that Margaret didn't keep interrupting. But there's just a few other things I want to talk about. And then we're going to, I also would urge the people on the Zoom call, if you've got questions, to put them in the chat box or ask them at the end. Can I just talk about your blindness? Because your eyesight's very bad now, isn't it?
It's very bad. It's 660 in the good eye, this being the good eye, which is what, 10%. But I function completely normally. I mean, I've all the problems that come with near blindness. I'm registered blind, although I do have a little bit of residual vision. Mostly, we find it difficult to function as normal. But over the years, I've been able to overcome every obstacle, one of which was being a little bit embarrassed to be seen reading with my torch magnifier on the tube or on the bus, but I got over that. And a lot of other sort of problems I was able over the years to come to terms with. And now I pass for normally sighted if I so choose. I'm very lucky that way. What helped me was having to overcome OCD, because that enabled me to overcome all sorts of obstacles. And I applied that same persistent effort to overcome. This was the second big obstacle, blindness, and overcoming stress as well, come to think of it. There's three things you learn. Either you sort of fall into victimhood, poor me, or you say, I'm gonna jolly well get out of this. And totally blind people have a completely different problem. If I were totally blind, I probably would have gone in to be a victim, but I'm not. So it was relatively easy for me to overcome it.
And they sometimes say that when one sense starts failing, the other ones creep up and get better. Did you find that? Do you have any superpowers?
No.
No.
My hearing's always been good, so the point's really academic.
Okay. I thought that was a cracking question. I thought I'd have a good answer for that. And you just went, no. and there's always, let me just ask you one other thing there about being, but people always say, would you rather be blind or would you rather be deaf? Which do you think you'd rather be?
I'd rather be, I think, blind.
Yeah, I think it'd be very lonely to be deaf. Right, let's get to the big thing then. Aphorisms. So you've got retirement age when most people are thinking, right, I'll take up golf or put my slippers on, and you decided you were, instead of keeping a diary, you're going to start writing all these one-liners every day.
That's quite right. Well, I've been averaging about 6 a day since June 2000.
That's amazing.
I'm amazed myself. And the longer you do it, the more you hone your craft, to the point where I can now detect the early ones because they need work. The later ones, less work. And the way it started was I wrote my first play, Commanding Voices, which had a 5-week run up here in London, in Hampstead. Got lovely reviews. And I read it after the last night, and there were 4 one-liners standing out, and they were aphorisms, which unwittingly I'd written. I thought, well, I don't need to write a play to write aphorisms. I can just do them on an industrial scale, and that's what I've been doing, as you said, for the last 20 odd years.
Now there'll be people watching thinking, hang on, writing plays, when did that happen? Last we heard you were a journalist. When did the playwriting start?
Well, that was almost by the by. I mean, I always loved the theatre. My cousin Robert Eddison, my namesake, was one of the leading actors in the West End. And yeah, it went from there. The interesting thing is that I was able to persuade my old Cambridge College, the professor of English there, to institute the Edison annual Aphorism Prize. And as we speak, we're in the process, I think, of advertising it this week to the current cohort of my college undergraduates. And I will be going down in a few months I should also be one of the judges. Now I'll be going down in a few months to give the prize to the winner. I think it's hilarious because the prize is £500. So the lucky undergraduate who gets 500 quid for 10 words is doing pretty well. By my reckoning, that's 50 quid a word.
That's fantastic. That's a very good rate. I'd be happy with that as a journalist.
I bet you would.
Delighted with
So
that. Yeah, and I mean, and the students need all the help they can get at the moment. So, what do you think if you were coaching someone at your old college on writing an aphorism? What would you say are the essential elements of a good aphorism?
I think a good aphorism has to be brief, where every word punches above its weight, and it's got to be witty and or profound. If you get a witty, profound one in 10 words, you're doing pretty well.
Can you give me an example of one that you're particularly proud of having written?
Let me think. I had one about an obese man.
Hmm.
I cannot think of the. Well, that's right. I remember it now. One man's beer belly is another man's corporation.
Excellent.
One of the ones I love, as you may know, Jeremy, I love paradox.
Yeah.
And I love tongue-in-cheek aphorisms, of which I've done many thousands.
Mm.
And another one of my favorite aphorisms is youth is wasted if not misspent.
Absolutely, yes. And I always used to get annoyed when people said, whenever I did a good shot in snooker, people would say, "Oh, you've had a misspent youth." And I thought, no, I've just practiced hard. Well, that's not what was.
Absolutely. You regret it if you don't in later years. I'm sure one does.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So just a reminder to the people on the Zoom, you can be putting your questions in the chat box, or at the end, we'll open microphones and you can put your questions to Robert. I'm very impressed with that your old college is doing the Edison Prize. That sounds really good. And you're very keen on education, aren't you? And
yes,
let's talk about schools, because I know you're really feeling sorry for all the schools at the moment, with lockdown.
I feel very sorry, you're right, because we read all the time, don't we, of children who are nearing, I suppose, a nervous breakdown because they feel so insufferably dysfunctional in this rather artificial lockdown environment. And I'm a little bit worried, actually, for children, particularly in state schools. Here I am being very politically incorrect again. I just don't think that, I think they're over feather-bedded. I think what you have to do in school is, no, I'm going to go on with this. What you have to do in school is prepare a child for life. And in life, we have problems, as witness lockdown. And if you featherbed them, and instead of saying, look, you failed this exam, instead of saying that, you say, don't worry, Tommy, you've got a Z pass. They're not prepared for the obstacles they're going to face the minute they leave school. And I think this is showing very much, as you sort of implied, with lockdown. They're finding problems they're not trained to deal with. But what I do feel is that lockdown can be put to advantage if they use the time to read as opposed to watch. Because Edison Wordplay, the company I formed with my project manager, Carlos, here, back last year, our brand, we're campaigning mainly for one thing, to ensure, to give the English-speaking world access to what we hope are some amusing one-liners, and also at the same time to persuade children that learning a language is not drudgery. It does not have to be drudgery. It can be hugely pleasurable, as I indicated at the beginning, when you read adventure books. And if you do it that way, you don't have to make the effort to learn. You find yourself already having learned. And that's the message that we're trying to get across, particularly to schools and also to universities.
Yeah, so it's all about it being fun. So that it's very much putting the play into words, as in words.
Spot on. Absolutely that. And if we can succeed there, I feel I've given a little back in return for all that I've received in what has been so far has been a very privileged life.
So how many more books are you going to put out? Because you must have thousands of aphorisms that can be put into these books that you've already written.
Well, again, Jeremy, what a good question, because I feel I've done my work. Everything's written. There's enough there. If I bin 20,000 aphorisms, I've still got enough for 30 books of the quality and format of Wisdom and Wordplay here. This was my first book of aphorisms, and what I'd like to do, everything allowing, what I would like to do is produce a book every 3 or 4 months. Now, I may be told by a publisher that I'm just on cloud 9, fantasizing. I hope I'm not. I hope it's realistic. I'd like all the books to look very similar to this, same thickness, same size, that a lady can put into her handbag. My sister said she could put this into her handbag. I don't want it any bigger, but I want the books to look different, because every book will be very different. The aphorisms will be there, but they will be packaged in a completely different way. And that's what I'm planning for the rest of my life.
It sounds brilliant. Right, we're going to have questions in just a moment, but first, as advertised, how did you deal with Margaret Thatcher? What was that special?
Oh, yes. Well, I was lucky to get the interview. Bit of schmarming there, I have to say, but forget about that. So there I am in her North Finchley constituency office. She's behind her desk. She's clearing her desk from the last meeting she had, which I admire. She does. One of her, to concentrate, you virtually have to have a clear desk or the equivalent. You don't want anything diverting you. You don't want to multitask. You just focus. And that's what she did. And I like that straight away about her. I also, you asked me whether I liked her. I did like her because I felt she was a conviction politician. Honour meant something to her. She would have been appalled, and is probably turning in her grave as we speak, at this sort of post-truth fake culture we live in. It's just awful. And I admired her integrity. I admired her industry, the way she focused and got things done. She was a talker, but she was much more. She delivered on what she said. So I go in, and I had read Patrick Cosgrave's biography of her the previous night. And one thing stuck in my mind. She hated being interrupted. And I thought, well, God, I'm not going to get very far if she hates being interrupted. So I wanted her to agree to be interrupted. And the way I got her to agree was, I go into the room. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Thatcher. Have you got a gun? That's my first question when I went in. Have you got a gun? A gun, dear boy. Why would I need a gun? To shoot me with. But why would I want to shoot you? We've only just met. Because, Mrs. Thatcher, I want to cover your political life, your private life, domestic life, your international life, where you see Britain in the world, what your plans are when you become Prime Minister next year. All this, and your staff has only given me half an hour to get it all in. It was a long pause. Interrupt me as much as you like, dear boy. And I had her in the palm of my hand. The half hour had gone, despite the lack of interruptions. I hadn't covered all the territory. Her PAs, and then she said, I'm perfectly happy with Mr. Edison. I shall be with him another hour. And I got the most amazing interview. And it was that interview, as I said before, that appearing in the London Times, that opened all doors to me in national journalism.
Brilliant. Well done. Well, I hope I've got permission to interrupt you. And just
of course you have.
Just imagine what a good story it would have been if she had have had a gun. That would have been a great story, wouldn't it? But
well, I don't know whether I would be talking now if she had.
No, maybe not. Right, let's get some questions then. So first comes from Charlotte Maddox. Charlotte, do you want to ask the question yourself? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask the great question?
Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Hi. I was just wondering whether your OCD impacted your writing at all, or whether you're completely free of it now, or if you still feel it when you're writing.
I'm totally free of OCD, which, as you know, Charlotte, is an exaggerated form of something we all do anyway. We all collect things to an extent, you know, even if it's handkerchiefs or shoes. That's not OCD, that's normal. But I do have a hoarding side to me, which technically it's not OCD, by the way, but technically that is not OCD in any event, as we know it. I do get a buzz. You're right, there is a link, I think. I do get a buzz from not losing aphorisms once I've thought of them. And the polar opposite of me, of course, was Oscar Wilde. He was a sort of complete spendthrift with money and with ideas and interesting lines. Had his team not noted down his bon mot, his West End plays would have been much impoverished. He's the opposite to me, I think. He was a spendthrift. I'm a collector. And I think there is that link. And I'm very grateful for it, because without that, we wouldn't be doing all these books.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. That's a cracking question. I think you still have got a little bit of OCD, because your shelving behind you looks very, very neat. And also anyone that keeps a suit that long, I think has a little bit of OCD. Let's go to Salim, who's got a question about books. Salim, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Hi, Robert. Hi.
Who's this?
It's Salim Richmond.
Hi.
Salim!
Yes.
Salim, is through you that I met Charlotte.
I know. Fantastic.
I'm so glad. I couldn't be more grateful to you.
Excellent. I'm glad it's all working out well. I just wanted to know when we could expect the next book.
Within the next 3 months.
Okay.
Fantastic. That's a very precise answer. Within the next 3 months. Yasser is with us, and Yasser's got a question. Do you want to unmute yourself, Yasser?
Hi, Robert.
Hi, Yasser.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, just an easy question. What was your first aphorism? When did it all start?
I'd have to check my play and look it up. But, one of my favorite aphorisms is the absent-minded professor is not so much absent as present elsewhere.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. The one I like in your book is squares are never ahead of the curve. I think that's a really good one.
That's a good one, isn't it? I love wordplay. I love wordplay, and a lot of them are wordplay.
Thanks, Yasser. Let's go to Richard Scott, who's got a question. Richard, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hello again. Thank you, Jeremy.
Hello, Richard.
Hello, Robert. Here's a quick question for you, to which I'm sure you'll have an interesting answer. So if an alien were to read Wisdom and Wordplay, what do you think? An alien?
Yes.
An alien from outer space were to read Wisdom and Wordplay, what do you think it would learn about the human race?
I would like to think that that alien, provided he or she, well, it has to be politically correct, he or she could read, they would, I think, perhaps enjoy the humor, have the odd chuckle, better still laugh at my funnier ones. I would hope they would have been given food for thought on the more profound ones, and maybe see things in a slightly different light, maybe see planet Earth in a different perspective to what they had before. So a lot of my aphorisms are around planet Earth and flat earthers. Who knows what the alien might think? Yeah. But as to the suit, Jeremy, coming back to what you said, no, I see. If a suit looks, I could pretend this suit was bought yesterday. If it's brand new, I see no reason to throw it out. I don't see why one has to have OCD to keep a suit, provided it's in good condition. I think you had your tongue in your cheek.
I was ribbing you slightly. Yes.
Rather as I have my tongue in my cheek when I write so many of these aphorisms.
Excellent. A good waving of the book. You've done well there. And can you remember how much that suit was?
Well, I'm learning from a professional.
Yeah.
I think it cost me £10, 10 shillings.
Well, I can say you've certainly had your value out of that. Right, let's have a few more questions then.
Yes.
Leanne Manor has a question. Leanne, do you want to unmute yourself? Oh, hang on, let me just check that Leanne might not be on the call anymore, but the question's here. It seems, I've got the question here, Robert, I'll read it. It seems reflecting on and understanding the world has greatly influenced your writing, but do you think the act of writing has also helped you better understand the world?
I think it's very interesting. Whoever asked that question, it's a very perceptive,
Leanne.
Point of view. Yes, I think the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. I think on the one hand, you bring your understanding of the world into your work, and the distillation of that understanding, which is what happens when you're condensing very often complex thoughts into single lines, that in turn helps you, rather as dreams, they kind of make sense of your life. They help me make sense of what I've understood. So yes, very much a two-way two-way action there.
Perfect. Let's go to Apollonia, who has a question. I hope I'm saying your name right. Yeah,
You are.
perfect. Yes, Apollonia.
Yes, you did. Good evening, everybody.
Good.
Just one quick one about the toucher, an aphorism about the touch.
Yeah. What about it? Sorry.
A quick one, an aphorism about the Margaret Thatcher.
No, I don't work like that.
No.
How about
I can give you plenty of aphorisms I have thought about and written.
Yeah. Fortunately, Robert, I have the ability to write aphorisms on the fly. And here's one I've just made up about Margaret Thatcher, just for Apollonia, which is an iron lady will not be pressed. Because
That's a good one.
Interrupting. Look at that. Look at the Claire's face. Loving that. Look at that.
I love it. I know. Well, I told you, I'm beginning to fear you as a rival.
Right.
I will second that, if I may, in answer to Apollonia's question. The Iron Lady has a spine of steel.
Excellent. And I will respond with, I would give you another aphorism about an iron lady, but I'm a little rusty.
Oh, very good.
Thank you very much. Good.
It reminds me of the secretary who, after 2 years, went back to her employer, back to her old job, having said that she was still able to type quite fast. She typed very slowly, and the employer looks at her and said, "Margaret, you did tell me your typing was a little rusty. What I didn't realize is that the rust had so little to bite on."
Excellent. It's like a fencing match of stuff going backwards and forwards. That's lovely. Apollonia, I hope you're happy with that. Huda, am I saying that name right? Huda, do you have a question for Robert? Just check, still on the call.
Yes, yeah, you said it correctly.
Oh, good. I was panicking. I'm sight reading these names. So yeah, Huda, what's your question for Robert?
Hi, Huda.
Hi, Robert. My question is, being the world's leading aphorist, what tips or advice would you give to aspiring aphorists and those interested in writing one-liners?
Have fun playing with words.
Excellent. And you've had a lot of fun, I think, right? I mean,
I love it. I love it.
When you get a good one, does it just, for the rest of the day, does it make you smile?
6 times a day. Yes, I get, on average, 6 eureka moments every day.
And of the 6 that you write every day, how many of them would you say would get in a book? I mean, what's your...
Well, when I said bin 20,000, that would be 2/3. So 2/3 of 6 would be 4. Maybe two out. Well, I would say probably 4 out of the 6 now, because they're much better quality now with having honed my craft. Probably 4 out of 6 will go into the will be published. I'll probably been about 10,000. Yes, 10,000.
Okay, I've got one more person who wants to ask a question, but if anyone's got any questions, then just put them in the chat box and I will come to you. Basil, you have a question for Robert. Basil,
yes. All the way from Jordan. From your large house in Amman.
Yeah. Oh, Basil, you need to unmute yourself. I don't do the unmuting. You need to do that. It's I'm not a qualified engineer. Here we go.
Hey, Bob. How are you, mate?
Very well, very well, very well.
Long time. Robert, you keep amazing me all the time.
Sorry?
You keep amazing us all the time. I mean, you keep just, like a lot of energy comes from you. But you never told me about your private life, like how many partners you had, how many love affairs you had.
Well, I'm very lucky in that I'm bisexual, so I have the world at my feet. And I have put it this way, Basil. I'm very happy to answer your question directly. Why wouldn't I? At my age, I don't. Yeah, why not? I've had I've had many partners of both sexes over my very long life, and sex for me is like food and writing aphorisms are one of life's 3 great pleasures, as far as I'm concerned.
Fantastic answer. Thanks for.
So, what's the sexiest aphorism you ever came up with?
But Basil, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm looking forward to accepting your kind invitation to Jordan.
Yes, please, immediately.
Well, not
I'll be honored.
We're in
I will be
lockdown.
honored. But I want to know, like, what's the sexiest aphorism you have ever written?
So I missed your question.
What's the sexiest words you ever written?
Oh, I've done hundreds on sex. I have a rubbish memory for recording what I've written. On this, I've turned it, I may say, to a great advantage, because when I reread Wisdom and Wordplay, they come to me as completely fresh, as if they were written by somebody else. So I never tire of reading my own work. So my amnesia I put to great advantage, to great benefit.
Thank you so much, Basil. Thank you very much for that. He's obviously a very good friend of yours. Richard A has a question. Richard.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, hi, Robert. Let me
Hi,
just see
Richard.
why the camera is not working. But meanwhile, I have two questions for you. So do you regret that you didn't discover your love of aphorisms earlier in your life?
I do and I don't. Had I discovered them earlier, I would not have discovered you and Carlos and Omar and Huda and Sarah and the Richard and the rest of the team. And I think I might have been disappointed because I have a rubbish business brain. I have no idea or interest in marketing anything. All I do is write and turn the product over to people who do the marketing. So I'm not sure I would have got very far if I had tried earlier on, Richard. And had I then failed, I might very well not have come back to it and succeeded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks for answering. But I have a second question as well. So you like to write the different categories, let's call them, or types of aphorisms, like the profound ones, the funny ones, the witty ones.
Yes.
Do you have any favorites? Like you like to tackle, like the profound ones, or you like the witty ones? Just, I'm just curious.
Fine. Well, lovely. I'll satisfy your curiosity. My cleaner's 11-year-old grandchild, 11 years old, was chortling with laughter. And there she was reading, I don't know what page it is, she was reading Peeing is Relieving. She loved it. One of my shorter ones. And of course, it's a play on seeing is believing, as you obviously recognize.
Richard,
so you're saying you enjoy the funny ones?
I like all of them. If I didn't enjoy writing them or reading them, having forgotten I'd written them, then I wouldn't have written them in the first place. So everything I've written, yes, I do enjoy. I get a eureka moment from writing every one of them. Now, a novelist, by comparison, by contrast, does not get a eureka moment, do they? Because they've probably got to write a whole chapter before they can feel, oh, that's wonderful. But I get one with every line. I'm very lucky. It's a wonderful medium to specialize in.
Thank you very much. I think that's all the questions we have time for, but I just want to end with one that's been intriguing me. So you were at Cambridge and you were a master at speaking Russian. Surely at some point you must have been a spy, or someone must have said, can you come and spy for us when you went to Russia? Didn't they?
Well, they did, but when I see a plane going over, Jeremy, and if I'm asked about it, what was, when I was younger, what was the make of that plane? I wouldn't have a clue. Well, can you describe it? Yes, it's got 2 wings. I don't think I would have made a very good spy, to be honest.
Oh, but were you asked?
There was sort of a few preliminary gestures towards a possible request that I be it, but I think when they, well, I don't know how much they knew about me, but I don't think they saw me as spy material. I never really got a serious invitation.
Fantastic. Well, Robert,
Jeremy, before you end, may I ask a question to Robert?
Of course you can.
Yes.
So this is Carlos, is it? Who's
yes.
Right. Yeah.
My project manager.
Yes. If you go back in time, would you get married and get kids? Like, I mean, because until now you don't have any kids. If you go back in time, would you decide?
Probably not.
Okay.
Because I hugely value my independence. And I think I would be a pain to any wife. She'd say, dinner's ready, 7 o'clock, And I'd feel very tied to that. I like to be more of a freebooting freelancer, able to sort of create each day as new, separate from yesterday and separate from tomorrow. I think this goes, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I suspect a lot of highly creative people feel the same way. And also, if you marry and have kids, by definition, if you're going to be a good husband and father, a huge amount of your attention has to go on your children, to your children. And that time and that effort and that energy is taken, and your money, of course, is taken away from your creativity. And I prefer to, I'm happiest when I'm creating. I don't know how happy or otherwise I would be married with children. I doubt if I would be as happy doing that.
Thank you.
If that answers your question.
Could I ask something? Is
yes.
Time? I just wanted to know, Robert, does each of your new books, do they have a special theme, or are the aphorisms random?
It's interesting you ask that, because this Wisdom and Wordplay is a mixed salad. In other words, you can have one aphorism. One aphorism on cannibalism, the next on sex. You have the shock, surprise element. Whereas if you had a whole list, 2 pages of sex and 2 pages of political correctness, you'll begin yawning, at least I would, after the 10th aphorism. So I like the mixed salad approach. But that said, I'm projecting a book where I'm polishing the aphorisms of the allegedly world-class aphorists, because almost every one I've read I can improve and polish. So I may do a book on that. Another book I'm projecting is on a monothematic, on just one theme. Maybe I'll just do a book on cannibalism, or maybe just a book on political correctness. Illustrate.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Illustrate. Yeah, I know it's what you're asking. And the illustrated books are those that sell. This is relatively unillustrated, so that'll change with the other books.
And Robert, you were saying if anyone wanted a copy of the book that's on the call, you'll give them a free copy if they haven't already got one.
Well, Carlos and I are more than happy to give a free Christmas gift to anybody who would like a copy of Wisdom and Wordplay, the paperback. We've sold out of the hardbacks. As a sort of free Christmas gift, you're more than welcome. And any of you who are not on mute, who would like that, please ask Jeremy and he'll pass you on to Carlos to send you one.
Yeah, well, just put it in the chat box now. If everyone knows how to use the chat box down the right-hand side, if you just go to the bottom of your Zoom window, there's a little thing that says chat, click on that, put your name in there saying, yes, please, Robert, I would like one. And then Carlos will contact you and make sure that you get one. I think that's been a fascinating conversation, Robert. Thank you so much for sharing that always. I'm just going to put the Zoom window on, so maybe everyone could just give Robert a round of applause for, I think that was fantastic, interesting hour of conversation. Yeah, well, I tell you what, we're getting loads of messages from Leanne wants one, Whale wants one, Mott wants one. So yeah, thank you so much. That was really good, Robert. And so you're now going to get this next book out, and we're going to get all these books. You're going to get to be a famous person, and it's going to be brilliant, because I really feel like at 87, you are just an inspiration to us all.
Thank you. Jeremy, may I extract one undertaking from you?
Of course, yeah.
I think it's very bold of you to say yes before you know what it is.
You've got anything, but you've only got to ask for it. Whatever you want,
Very nice of you to interview me when I have my next book out.
Of course I will, yeah. Yeah,
that'd be lovely.
For your next 10 books, I'll interview you.
Wonderful. I enjoy this sort of conversation and chat with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed the last hour. Thank you very much for making it so painlessly easy and fun. That's the key word.